and they don't even understand what I'm saying. And they've got such a strong bias toward their point of view that they're unwilling to accept a new idea and even stop and think about it for a bit. Peter is also in the Theta Delta Chi fraternity. So he actually was he was 4 years ahead of me. So I guess he was like a first year grad student or graduate student when I was a freshman. But the grad students would always come back to the house. So he hung out. We got to know each other, and we had common interests because he was an aeronautical engineering grad and I was an aeronautical engineering student. So sometimes I had with a very rich fellow, and we were talking about iPhones, and people that were in the business that were using the iPhone, living on it, breathing on it, could see the potential. And as you know, the potential of the iPhone was to replace the tape recorder and the video camera and the photograph and rebuild our relationships and potentially topple small governments, change the way you thought about everything, change healthcare. But someone that studied the iPhone for like 2 hours would say, oh, it looks like an expensive phone, but eventually it'll get manufactured and commoditized and the price is going to go towards zero. So the people that were outsiders that had spent a couple of hours playing with it and didn't really think about the implications, they would model it based upon something else. And a lot of times they're just very dismissive, and the point that I was making there was not necessarily right. If it's an industrial piece of equipment and the functionality is fixed, it may very well commoditize. But if it becomes a fashion item and a personal item, and you sleep with it, right? And you use it in your social life, your business life, and it keeps changing, then there's no reason it would ever necessarily commoditize. It'll either hold its price. The example of holding its price is like a very nice bag, a Birkin bag or a Gucci bag. They're holding their price for 5,000 years. But of course, comparing an iPhone to a handbag, you would think it ought to be able to do at least as well as a handbag, right? I mean, in theory, with technology, we're going to get in a Tesla car and one day it'll be strong enough to levitate, hover, and fly 500 miles an hour. So deciding that it's getting commoditized is a presumption that there's no technology involved, and it doesn't matter personally to us. So I think in general, you see that with all new technology, right? People are dismissive of it. How many people spent 1,000 hours thinking about the applications of the iPhone? Well, I mean, I did. I wrote a book about it, right? But I lived it, right? And I'm in the business. But a lot of people didn't, and they would dismiss it. But I think the same thing is true of, Google Maps, search. How many people underestimated the potential of a YouTube type thing, right? I mean, most people, right? Most person spending an hour or 2 hours says Bitcoin, this crypto stuff, it's all just speculation. But, and even when I say this is digital energy, well, I don't know, 2/3 of the people in the crypto industry for the last decade, they don't understand what I'm saying. So there are people that have been in the crypto industry for a decade that have master's degrees in computer science, and they think that they're very informed. And they don't even understand what I'm saying, and they've got such a strong bias toward their point of view that they're unwilling to accept a new idea and even stop and think about it for a bit. So I don't think it's limited to non-technologists. I think non-technologists would look and you would say, okay, well, what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is digital money. What is money? You remember you guys sat through 20 hours of my lectures on what is money? Okay, I'm going to tell you a secret. I didn't know what money was when Robert Breedlove asked me to go and do the podcast. He said, come on my show called What is Money? And I said, well, gosh, I guess I better think about what is money before I get on the show. And then I ended up writing out a 10-page outline and it becomes 30 hours of discussions. But I got to the year 2020 without thinking about what is money. Most of the people in the world don't know what is money. So if you say it's digital money, that doesn't click. And then if you say it's digital property, most people don't know what property is. They haven't thought about the definition of property or property rights. What is that really, right? Do you own your own stuff if you live in North Korea? Do you own anything, right? I mean, what does it mean to own anything? And then, of course, if you call it digital energy, most people don't. Well, they're like, oh, no, it's not energy. You can't run a car on it. But then they haven't thought about what is a digital map or digital music or digital communications or digital relationship. And I had the advantage a little bit of that because if you read the mobile wave is about what happens when you have digital maps, digital relationships. And the only difference is all that digital information is non-conservative. And the whole point of money is energy, economic energy, and therefore, i.e. conservative. And so when Satoshi invented something that allowed you to transfer value from two parties without an intermediary, not only did Satoshi invent the ability to transfer energy in cyberspace, Satoshi invented the ability to manifest energy in cyberspace, something conservative. Well, people that are computer scientists don't understand conservation of energy. If I'm criticizing the computer science geeks, right? And this is not, at MIT, they make you study physics and thermodynamics, right? And mechanical engineering as well as computer science. But if all you did was study computer science and you never studied physics and thermodynamics and mechanical and aeronautical engineering, then you're lulled into this false sense of security where you think you can just make any rule and do anything because there's no conservation of energy. The reason that aeronautical engineering is a really good grounding to understand what money is or what crypto should be or what Bitcoin should be is aeronautical engineering is like the ultimate systems engineering discipline. You have to master computer science, computer engineering, mechanical engineering, metallurgy. You have to master chemical engineering, electrical engineering, control systems. You have to master ocean engineering, fluid dynamics, propulsion, all of these things which are highly inconvenient for a computer scientist. So I guess what I'd say is I think most people that grew up in the crypto industry, they only know enough to hurt themselves. I think most people that aren't technologists, they only know enough to hurt themselves. And if the people that really understand the thing, like if you go into Google and you find the person that worked on Google Maps for 5 years, if they understood engineering and computer science and they stared for 5 years, they're probably understanding the thing, right? The people that spend the most time and have the most invested in it, they typically understand the thing. And generally the conclusion is they invest 100x more than you would. They value it much more than the guys at Google paid $1 billion for something that if you had asked 1,000 investors on Wall Street, what is YouTube worth? The high bidder was probably Google. And there were probably 5 out of 1,000 that would have said it's worth a lot.